instead of staring at this fan for hours, I thought I'd take a look at Sarah Boone's letter. Somebody asked me to do a reaction style video on that, so that's what I'm going to do. And that means I have not seen the letter yet. So I will be opening it and reading it on camera, and I understand it's over 50 pages. This is probably going to take me several videos to accomplish. I am expecting some key themes. Let's see how my psychic abilities are. Not fair, not my fault. Everybody's bad. My lawyer is terrible. Nobody cares about me. I'm being wrongfully judged. I haven't seen my disclosure. I'm being labeled unjust. Constitution, constitutional rights. My rights are violated. People are mean. I'm probably missing a bunch. I may not read every single word out loud. And part of that is because she makes allegations that aren't substantiated. And I think she wants all of the words read out loud. But I'm not here to do what she wants. I will, however, put all the words up on the screen so that if you want to read all of the words, they're there. Let's see what she has for us. 58 pages. Ongoing 5 years. ... Why can't I ... use my constitutional rights? Am I the only one who cares about the ongoing violations of? If her constitutional rights are in fact being violated, everybody should care. If it's okay to violate one person's constitutional rights, well then who decides that and where does it end? But her constitutional rights aren't being violated. She throws out lofty terms like constitutional rights, fair, honest. You've seen her prior letters. They're just lofty terms. She doesn't bring receipts. She doesn't present any kind of argument to back up what she's saying. So, okay. Have a bond. Well, I'm not even going to answer that. Have all my medical records. I have no idea what that's about. Have all my digital evidence and discovery. Not sure what she's going for there. She has been complaining all along that she hasn't seen her discovery. But when her most recent lawyer was in court, the lawyer mentioned seeing the discovery and seeing Sarah's handwritten notes on that discovery. Obviously, she's seen it. Is there some piece of discovery that she hasn't seen? If so, why is she not naming that? Have all my paperwork, notes, letters, pictures, everything of mine returned by my former attorneys. Again, not sure if in fact that wasn't returned. Speak to my investigator. Sounds like she did before. Have a complete download of my phone. Have any of my witness lists. I don't believe her. Give any insight, understanding, clarification, truths about my case, especially to my attorney. What? She's writing here to the world, as she likes to put it. If she wants to give insight, if she has slam dunk proof of her innocence, she could say so. It's not advisable, but she could. As for providing insights and understanding, well, is that insight or understanding as to the truth? Or is it, as she has previously said, my truth? So her truth, her version of what happened, the version she is insisting that everyone believe, her version of reality, her justifications. I have trouble believing that an attorney isn't going to want the truth, isn't going to want that information. What I don't have trouble believing is that Sarah did provide such information and people have told her that's nonsense. That won't work. The evidence shows otherwise. It's Sarah who is living in an alternate reality and wants everybody else to join in on that. And when I say alternate reality, I'm not suggesting that there is a mental illness to the extent that she's lost touch with actual reality. What I'm saying is she has created a reality that she likes better. It's not that she doesn't know. She's not insane. Be listened to by anyone, especially my attorney. Isn't it interesting how she has the exact same problem with pretty much everybody? Be respected for who I am truly, especially by my attorney, and not be disrespected for the mutated, malicious murderer all the world has falsely, incorrectly created and believes me to be. Where do I begin? This takes my mind back to the work of Stanton Samanow and Samuel Yockelson on the way criminals think and how being dissed is a horrible crime in that person's mind. In her case, she wants to be respected, first of all. And what does that mean to her? Does that mean agree with me, love me, adore me, go along, look up to me? What does that mean? And for who I am, truly, well, she keeps showing us who she is. She's shown her neighbors who she is. Drunk, angry, demanding, entitled, lies, fast and loose with the truth in other respects, doing the savior martyr thing, self-centered, self-aggrandizing. And yes, she has not been convicted by a court of a specific crime, but it is a fact that Mr. Torres died as a result of her action and or inaction. He begged for his life. He told her, I can't breathe. And she decided that she had the right to determine whether or not he could breathe. She had the right to keep him forcibly confined. However he got into that suitcase, and you guys know, I believe she hit him upstairs, then shoved him in the suitcase and threw that suitcase down the stairs. That's what I think. However, that has not been tested in court, so we're going to have to see. But however he got into that suitcase, the second he said, let me out, and she did not, that is a crime right there. So who is she? Well, that's who she is. And it's interesting that she says all the world has falsely, incorrectly created when she's the one who has created an alternate reality. Next sentence. To be treated fairly, lawfully, and be protected by the justice system. Oh, okay. So this part of this makes me mad. To be treated fairly. The system has bent over backwards for her. She says lawfully, and she knows that in writing this to a judge, that the word lawfully is going to be a key word. It's important. Once again, I mean, this whole thing is making allegations without backing them up. What was it that was unlawful? And if there was something unlawful, then what remedy is she seeking for that once she proves it? And here's the part that gets me. Be protected by the justice system. It's pretty hard, first of all, to protect somebody from themselves. And prior to the killing of Mr. Torres, she used the justice system, and I suggest abused the justice system. She wanted him with her when she wanted him with her, and she wanted him away from her when she wanted him away from her. She sat with detectives and bragged about how she got him out of jail, about how she helped him so much. There is a police report from when she called the police on him and claimed that he assaulted her. And when those officers for that incident looked into it, what they discovered was the reason he kicked her is because she had her hands around his throat and he needed to get her off of him. I am not saying that he was some saint. I'm not saying that he never did anything wrong to her. I'm not saying that. What I am saying, though, is she also committed acts and then tried to blame him. And blaming the victim is a thing that perpetrators do. Tried to blame him and make him go to jail for that and take the legal consequences for that. So she doesn't want the system to protect anybody else. She wants the system to protect her. Where was the protection for Mr. Torres when he was locked in that suitcase, begging to be let out, begging for his life. Nobody protected him. Well, the system couldn't. But if she wants to talk about protecting people, well, properly, rightfully, completely defend myself. Well, Sarah, I think that may be exactly the problem. You see, the lawyers who are having ethical concerns may want to properly and rightfully defend you. And properly seems to be up for debate as to what that means. Is it your version of properly or properly? And completely? What does that mean? Next point. See all and know the same as the world can and does, including my attorney, from all the phenomenal, non-permissive amount of my entire case being available online globally before my trial, and most important, before I have seen myself. What doesn't anyone know already about my case? How about my side in everything about everything? Oh boy, there is so much here. Okay. See all and know the same as the world. Well, if you open your eyes, maybe you could see. But let's set that aside for a second. What evidence or discovery is she claiming that the world has seen that she has not? If she knows it exists, she must know what it is. If she knows the world is seeing it, she must know what it is. So name it, Sarah. Name that item or those items of disclosure or discovery that everybody has seen and you haven't. Name it. Request it specifically. And I suggest to you that Sarah has seen much more than the public has. She would have seen the results of depositions. She likely saw the medical examiner's reports. She has seen more than the world. Further, she was there at the scene. She has seen from all the phenomenal non-permissive amount of my entire case. Okay, non-permissive? What does that mean? Is she suggesting that there was something disclosed that wasn't permissible under the law to be disclosed and somebody violated that? If that's the case, then Sarah, name that thing specifically. Instead of making these blanket, vague allegations and throwing around words, phenomenal, non-permissive, unfair, constitutional rights. List goes on. Instead of throwing around the concepts, be specific. State it. What is it that the world saw that wasn't permitted? And whose permission was supposed to be obtained here? Is she thinking that it's her permission that's required? Not sure. Online globally. She uses the idea of things being online globally in two different ways depending on what suits her in the moment. Oh, this is all online globally, the world. Everybody's seen, it's terrible. Now they're labeling, it's terrible. Yet she exploits that to her benefit. I still think that she is writing these letters not because the court can or will do much with it, but because she does want the world to see. She does want to be talked about. The thing that ticks her off is that people aren't saying what she wants them to say. These letters are from Sarah to the public, and she can't go for too long a stretch without being the center of attention again. And once this trial is done, however it ends, then what? Then she can't be screaming about how it's unfair. Mind you, I think that even after the trial is done, she's going to keep screaming and trying to get attention. She can't stand to feel insignificant. Before my trial, and most important, before I have seen myself. Again, what is it, Sarah, that everybody has seen that you have not? What doesn't anyone know already about my case? Actually, there's a lot we don't know. I want this trial to happen. I want to see everything that investigators have gathered. And I haven't seen that. I want to know what the medical examiner has to say about what kind of injuries he sustained and his time of death, and whether or not there's any evidence that CPR was attempted, because I still think there wasn't. And I want to know about things like post-mortem lividity and mechanisms of various injuries. I want to know all kinds of things around evidence we haven't seen. I want to hear from all of the witnesses. I don't know any of that because we haven't heard any of that. So there's a lot that the world doesn't know that would or should come out at trial. And how is it that she doesn't know? I think she's lying. And she says, how about my side in everything, about everything? Well, allow this to go to trial, Sarah. Allow it to go to trial. But you see, the problem is she doesn't want it to go to trial in the way that everybody else has to have a trial, because there are rules of evidence and there are rules that attorneys are subject to. So she can't play the gaslighting games and the, oh, it's unfair sort of vague allegations without any proof. She can't do that in court. They're going to put out the evidence and then test the evidence. And whoever represents her can take the facts and argue those facts and what those facts mean. She's not going to be granted a podium from which to give her narrative and not have that narrative be questioned or tested. I don't think she really wants a trial. I think she wants everybody just to believe her and be done with it. I think she knows she will be found guilty and she can't handle it. It would destroy her sense of self. Go back to earlier in this letter and in others where she says, but this is not who I am. To actually be found guilty in court would destroy her sense of who she is. It shatters her belief around who she is. She will never take responsibility. So yes, Sarah, you can get your side out. Go to trial. Next point. Be correctly understood that I am not the problem for reasons I am what? Be correctly understood that I am not the problem for reasons I am something malappointed by court attorney number 8. See my letter 7/21/23. I'm having trouble reading her writing. Maybe that is not malappointed. And she's referring to her letter from a year ago, almost a year ago. And I can't remember that whole letter off the top of my head. But certainly in every letter, there have been complaints about the lawyers. So it's more of the same. And I note the word correctly here. Correctly understood. Not simply understood. You must understand correctly, meaning you must understand this the way I want you to understand this. You must adopt my understanding. Do not think with your own brain. Please do not apply logic or ask any questions. And I am not the problem. Once again, everybody else is the problem. It's amazing, isn't it? Next point. Say what I want and should, but all the world can, and say it all wrong and warped. So the beginning of this was, why can't I? Why can't I say what I want and should, but all the world can? Okay, she is saying what she wants. It's possible that somebody has advised her to not say certain things. I have trouble believing that she actually takes advice fully. She does have a choice. I don't think it's advisable for her to be blabbing before her trial, but here she is. And she's saying she's not allowed to say what she wants. And here she says, and should. So she believes there are things she should say. Well, she truly believes that. Should. Not simply want. Should. Well, why isn't she saying it then? There's a reason. So she's saying it's unfair that other people can say what they want, but I can't. Well, first of all, yes, you can. Yes, the world can say what they want. And you know what? People do say things that suck and say it all wrong and warped. So everybody else's narrative is wrong except for mine, but I'm not going to tell you what it is, even though I should. And I am going to blame somebody else for why I can't or won't say what I should say. What's anybody supposed to do with that? Why won't my attorney? Oh my gosh. Here we go. Give me an honest answer. She probably did. You didn't like it. Show me everything she says she has and finished reviewing for my case, but withholds from me after I ask repeatedly for and about. What Cashman said to the judge in the last hearing suggests this is not true. And if Sarah is claiming a specific thing, she should say specifically what that is. It's another sort of vague mudslinging. Let's just throw a bunch of mud here. Let's see how many people we can get outraged on my behalf. Let's just vilify anyone who doesn't go along with me and give me what I want. That is a pattern that Sarah has, that she's demonstrated all along. You don't do what I want, you're going to pay. And I know that she walked out on her lawyer more than once. I think if she wasn't in custody, if the setting was different, if she could have got away with it, basically, she would have done more than walk away. That's my opinion. So here we're into mudslinging. Give me an answer other than I'm putting this to rest, that's not necessary, or I'm not having this conversation with you. Well, be specific. It's another of Sarah's tactics to take something out of context and say, but I wasn't lying. She just omits a whole bunch of other things so that she can take this thing out of context and make it sound bad. The lawyer probably did at one point say, I'm putting this to rest. We don't know what that was about. We don't know that that wasn't in Sarah's best interest. And that's not necessary. Again, we don't know what that is in response to. Was it in response to some remark Sarah made where somebody comes back and says, hey, that's not necessary? Or was it about a specific thing that Sarah wanted the lawyer to do, or that Sarah wanted said on her behalf, and the lawyer says, that's not necessary? That does happen, where an accused will say, oh, but you got to tell the judge this and this and this, or you have to go get XYZ. And the lawyer knows either it's not going to be admissible, it won't be helpful, it might actually be harmful, it's irrelevant, it's not necessary at all. That happens a lot. So that may be why the lawyer says that's not necessary, but we don't know. You're left to use your imagination and infer something through the lens that she wants you to see through, because she's taken it out of context and then put it into a context where, well, the lawyer is mean. I'm not having this conversation with you. Have you ever said that to somebody, where somebody is being ridiculous or rude, or they're just exhausting you, and you say, I'm not having this conversation with you? Or maybe somebody asks you to do something that you know is wrong, that you can't do or won't do, and you say, hey, I'm not having this conversation with you. We don't know what this is about, but we're supposed to think it's mean or bad somehow. Grant me access to anything I ask for in and about my case. What is she asking for? This is repetitive. What is it that you're asking for? Why isn't she specific? Is there a specific thing, Sarah, that you want and you can't get? Name it. Like the detectives in my case, stop putting words in my mouth. We have no idea what this is about, but we do have an idea what this is about with the detective. When Chelsea was doing an interview with Sarah, Chelsea said, so you went and you passed out. And Sarah took offense to that and said, no, I did not pass out. I fell asleep. That was very important for Sarah. On that point, Sarah is actually correct. The detective did do that. And that particular detective sort of summed up what she thought Sarah was saying instead of listening to what she was actually saying. And there were a number of times when I thought, oh, here was an opportunity to get more information, and the opportunity was lost because the detective didn't just be quiet. But here she is saying the lawyer is putting words in her mouth. And again, we don't know what that's about. Could it be that the lawyer is feeding back something to Sarah? You know how when somebody's talking to you and you want to make sure you understand, you feed it back to them and say, okay, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying this. Is that right? So that if you have misunderstood, the other person then has an opportunity to say, no, not quite, and correct that. Maybe that's happening. We don't know. And this also makes me wonder if Sarah hasn't heard the commentary about the detectives and how the one interrupted so much and talked so much. Because this is the first time in a letter that we're seeing this particular subject come up. So it makes me think that she has discussed this or heard about this commentary. Next point. Tell me what's going on in my case. Are you kidding me? It's been well over 100 days since she has been my attorney, and I still do not know. Ongoing 5 years. She's blaming the attorney she's had for 100 days for not knowing something ongoing 5 years. What is a larger amount of time? Would that be 100 days or 5 years? And what's going on in my case that she doesn't know? What is it she's asking? She knows what's going on. She complains about it. In the past, she's talked about progress. What she deems progress is different, though, from the case just progressing along. It's just another way for her to complain. Answer any of my questions. Hang on a second. If the lawyer didn't answer any questions, how then does Sarah stand up in court and tell the judge that the lawyer lied to her? How is that? And how is it that the lawyer can answer questions if you turn around and walk out because you don't like the answers? And that brings me to another point, which is her behavior pattern of, hey, if I don't like the answer, then it's not an answer. You must give me the answer that I want to hear. You must say what I want you to say. And if you don't, well, then you haven't given me the answer. Next point. Never ask me any questions. How can she supposedly know everything she needs to know from what she's been told, heard, read, seen? Well, Sarah, you've been talking for 5 years or however long it's been now. If the lawyer had a question, she would ask. And I don't know that the lawyer has not asked a question. Ever ask me any question. I'm sorry, I don't believe her. Next point. Reassure she's on my side. For me, not against. All right. All the time. Lawyers do try to reassure clients. Even when the news is bad, they're supposed to tell the client, you know what? This is really bad, but this is how we're going to deal with it. Or this is really bad. There's not much we can do, but you know what? You're going to be okay. Very often, lawyers spend time helping clients cope or trying to make a client feel better. And while that's true, the fact of the matter is your lawyer is not your therapist, is not your mom or dad, not your best friend, not your nanny. Your lawyer is there to be your legal advocate, to advocate for you within the legal system. Is it nice to have a lawyer who gives you that little bit of a human touch that gives you a bit of care? Yeah, that's nice. Is it necessary? That's debatable. If you want a nanny, go hire a nanny. If you want a lawyer, well, you've got a lawyer. And I know that Sarah expects people to not only do the things she wants them to do, but to also take care of Sarah emotionally. The trouble is, it's a bottomless pit. There is no amount of care or reassurance or hand-holding that will ever be enough. It will never, ever be enough. Doesn't matter who's trying, it's not going to be enough. Next point. Why have I already been judged in the court of public opinion? How did that happen? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I cannot believe that she even asked that. She exploits the court of public opinion. Her whole purpose in writing these letters is to address and manipulate, or try to manipulate, the court of public opinion. And why have I already been judged? Well, here's the problem, Sarah. As much as you try to manipulate the court of public opinion, it doesn't mean that everybody's buying it. Oh, there are people out there who are her fans, who feel sorry for her, who have bought into her spin on everything. So, in some respects, she has been successful. And she's been successful in getting people's attention. I mean, I'm sitting here talking about her letter that she sent to the public, and you're listening. So, I mean, this is what she wanted. So how did that happen? Well, that's hilarious. I think the how did that happen in her head is how did it happen that they didn't judge me the way I wanted them to judge me? I think that's her real question. What the heck? How come everybody doesn't just believe me? Why have I been sentenced by anticipation and condemned before my predicted trial? Whoa, that's packed. Sentenced by anticipation. You could take that to mean that everybody is anticipating a verdict and the sentence and have made up their minds about that. You could take this to mean that. But I think it reveals something else as well that we have seen before with her. And that is she has anxiety, and a lot of people do. So you can understand this. And anybody who is in custody, or heck, even out of custody, awaiting trial, is going to have anxiety. Even if you don't already have anxiety in general, you're going to have anxiety about that. And she demonstrated through her interview at the police station that she does have anxiety. She needs to anticipate what's going to happen. She is a control freak. And she needs to be able to anticipate what's going to happen so she can try and control that and make the world as she wants it. So I think this word here does kind of open the curtain a little bit and show you that she is anticipating and anxious. And fair enough, she's anxious, but that this is difficult for her. And it may be that she was told of the likely verdict, best and worst case scenarios in respect to verdict and sentencing, and she doesn't like it, and it's not clear cut. There are too many maybes, and even within the maybes, it's not the answer she wants. And she's the one struggling with the anticipation and what's it going to be and how's it going to go. And I don't like that answer. And so how can I get out of this? How can I change it? And that's difficult. And she says condemned before my trial. Well, you know what? This is a problem in general. But there's that video, and she is making it so the trial doesn't go ahead. And she keeps putting out these letters. So she kind of wants it both ways. And I noticed she says, my predicted trial. Predicted. I think that this word, predicted trial, tells you that she is going to try to have the trial delayed again. So don't be surprised if in September or before some other thing comes up, that there's some other reason why it can't go to trial. Of course, it won't be her fault. It'll be somebody else's fault. But I think if she can, she's going to get this trial delayed again. She doesn't want to go to trial. Why does my attorney and all the world think my case is already over? Actually, we don't think the case is over. It's interesting, though, that she claims her attorney thinks the case is over. Have the attorneys been saying to her, look, this isn't going to go the way you want. You're not getting a not guilty. Is that possible? Who knows? Could the attorneys have said, we've got all the evidence or everything to work with that we can? We don't know. But it's interesting that she's saying my attorney thinks it's over. Oh my gosh, I'm only on page 3. Your Honor, during our first introduction at my last withdraw of court-appointed attorney number 7, Hobson, you stated to me that your uninvolvement with any of my letters I write. I am still going to write my letters as conduitly they are to the world where all my potential jurors are located, and this is the only way anyone, including yourself, knows the very necessary insight to my continued disadvantages, hindrances, impediments I am still experiencing on top of the new spurring my intention to write. The race to the pulpit is unfair, and it's important to me that you are aware and understand what transpires when the news cameras are off and we're all in between my status hearings. Oh, okay. We've got repetition, court appointed, attorneys withdrawing, she's driving that home. Everybody's mean to her. Uninvolvement with any of my letters that I write. He's not willing to play her game the way she wants to play it. But she's explaining, I'm still going to write my letter because it's to the world. So first it's, how does the world have all this information? But I'm writing to the world. See, I told you, to the world. And then there's this little tidbit where all my potential jurors are located. Does she think that citizens of other countries can be called for jury duty in the United States? That can't be what she's saying, right? Or does she think that the United States of America is the world? Well, we know she doesn't because she mentioned, well, I got fan mail from South Korea. So what is this then? She knows that somebody from another country isn't going to fly over and be on her jury. She knows that. So what then is she saying? I think she's saying two things. First, it's impossible to have a fair trial because the whole world knows. Well, she's made sure that the whole world knows. And the jury is in the court of public opinion. And that's who she's trying to sway here. She doesn't want a trial because there are actual rules to that. In the court of public opinion, anybody can say anything. In the court of public opinion, actual facts don't matter. The evidence and actually testing that evidence doesn't matter. The court of public opinion can be manipulated, or she thinks that she can manipulate it. She's not going to be able to manipulate a court of law. And she says this is the only way anyone, including yourself, that's nonsense, knows the very necessary insight to my continued disadvantages and blah, 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 poor me. Well, how about insight into why you're not guilty? So this is, once again, taking the victim stance. And when I use that term, those of you who followed me for a while probably understand what I mean by this. I'm not talking about somebody who has actually been victimized. It's not the same thing. I am talking about a well-known pattern where a perpetrator takes the victim stance as a way to excuse themselves or justify what they've done. And the message is, poor me, I wouldn't have done this if that person hadn't done that thing. Poor me, poor me. And is being incarcerated a disadvantage in life? Yeah, it's horrible to be incarcerated. And all of that is besides the point. If she has a complaint that is grounded in law and backed up by fact, then she should make that specific complaint. But she doesn't. It's a vague, I'm disadvantaged, and it's everybody else's fault. And she says spurring my intention to write. Interesting choice of words there. I think she always intended to write and she just needed a particular trigger or excuse. And I think that she intends to write again. And she's just waiting for that trigger or excuse. And the race to the pulpit. Very interesting choice of word here. And I don't know if it's simply that that's the word that came to her mind. But when you look at pulpit and podium, pulpit can have this religious connotation to it. So I find that interesting. And she says, it's important to me that you, and in quotations, are aware and understand what transpires when the news cameras are off. And I think this is a key piece of information she's given everybody. When those news cameras are off and I have to be in this place and I'm not the center of attention, I'm not famous in those moments, that's hard. So just write letters. 2, as so many of the advantageous embezzlers, racketeers, mindless lemmings, and just altogether mean people can use their freedom of speech, not knowing me in any way other than what's being said by all the other mean people and being said incredibly incorrectly. So can I. Ooh, okay. Embezzler is a very specific thing. So is racketeering. Mindless lemmings. Well, that's interesting because I think that what Sarah wants is a group of mindless lemmings to follow along with whatever she wants them to believe. You know, somebody disagreeing with you doesn't make them a mindless lemming. And just because you say it so, it doesn't mean it is. Mean people can use their freedom of speech. We all know there are mean people, especially online. People forget that behind that computer screen, there is another human being. They do say cruel, unfounded things. People say things intended to hurt. People will unfairly judge. People will judge based on something they heard 10 other people say without actually thinking about it or finding out if that thing is true. People do that. Yes. And sometimes, heck, a lot of times, it's unfair, it's uncalled for, and it is cruel. And the intention is to be cruel. So does that happen? Yep, it does. Is it fair? Nope. And she's right in the sense of not knowing me and wrong in the sense of in any way. We saw body cam, we saw police interviews, we've seen other videos of her, we've seen her in court, we've watched her behavior in all of those areas, we've heard from actual eyewitnesses, and she puts her own attitudes and behaviors on display for the public. She does that on purpose. She has been showing us who she is. So it's not knowing her in any way other than what's being said by other mean people. That's not accurate. I get it to some extent, what she's saying in that respect. But the advantageous embezzlers, racketeers, yeah, I don't think so. And remember, she accused a judge of being, I don't know, I can't remember if it was embezzler or something along those lines. But she accused a judge of that too. And it's, again, I don't like what you're saying. I don't like that you don't adopt what I'm saying. Therefore, I'm going to lash out. And that behavior pattern that we've seen demonstrated over and over and over is one reason why she is not a good candidate for bond, even if there was going to be such a hearing. And that's just one red flag. So yes, people are mean. And she's saying, so all these people are doing this, so can I. And I think she really means I can use my freedom of speech too. And yes, she can. The way it could read is that she can say mean things as well. So you could read it that way. But we're back to her justification for why she's writing, why she's saying things. But you can't put something out there and say, look, I want the world to hear this. I am speaking to you, world, and then make allegations that are vague and not backed up at all, and then expect that nobody is going to question that. As the compelling, annoyed detectives in my case. Did I read that wrong? I think that does say compelling. Okay. Annoyed detectives in my case, Copsall had to falsify documents, and Lewin wore his gun for me to see. I'm going to stop here and not even read the rest of the paragraph yet. Compelling. Using the word compelling. I'm wondering, is she trying to imply here that they compelled her to say something? Especially when you connect this with the one, he wore his gun for me to see. Sounds to me like she's talking to people inside the jail and they're giving her information. Oh, if he wore his gun, maybe they compelled you to make a statement. Your statement isn't voluntary. You get it thrown out. Is that where she's going in her head here? Is that the seed she's planting? We saw the body cam footage and we saw the footage from the time she was brought in to the interview room until the time they put her in cuffs. Did you see that detective flashing his gun at her? He is a police officer. He wears a gun. So she's implying that he handled himself in such a way as to make her feel compelled or intimidated into making a statement she didn't want to make. All right, let's pretend that he was doing that and he was trying to intimidate her. Let's just pretend that is the case, that he did things in a way that would create that kind of feeling in the interview room. You saw that interview. Did she look intimidated and scared of him? Did she have any problem pushing back and saying, that, no, you don't understand. No, you're wrong. And she said, you're being unfair. You're not being fair to me. You're making it worse. At one point, she said that. Did she seem at all afraid to push back? Well, I suggest there's no issue on voluntariness. Now, a lawyer might argue something different. We're going to have to wait and see. Annoyed detectives, they did seem annoyed, but they're under no obligation to always be having a good day. And Sarah was annoying. I want to address this falsifying documents. I am aware, and I have been aware, that there was an investigation into Chelsea in respect to falsifying documents, and there was an allegation, okay? I did not make a video about that or talk about that because under investigation is not the same as the person did it. I know from seeing it all the time at work, people make all kinds of false allegations against police officers. You get everything from the outlandish and unbelievable to accusations where you think, is that possible? And they have to be investigated. You can't just say, oh, well, it's a police officer and you're an accused, it didn't happen. You can't do that. You have to look into it. You have to make sure. Because if an officer is doing something wrong, well, that needs to get weeded out. And that's, if the police department, that whichever one we're talking about, those in leadership, they don't want that crap. So they do want to weed it out. They may not be so keen on having that made public because then the perception is that all cops are bad because the only thing that they're seeing or hearing about is the bad ones, and they're not seeing all the good cops who are slogging it out day after day. So allegations get made all the time. It doesn't mean that it happened. In this case with this detective, first of all, my understanding was that the allegation made against the detective was not in relation to Sarah's case at all. And I could be wrong, But I find it interesting that Sarah made as is her pattern, a statement here where she could say, well, I didn't lie because this was the allegation. I didn't say it was about documents in my case, right? So my understanding was it wasn't about this case, first of all. And again, I could be wrong. Second, that issue with that detective was investigated and it took some time. So it was investigated and she was exonerated. So it didn't even come out as unfounded. You know, sometimes that happens. She was exonerated. And I know some of you think, oh, well, you know, when the police investigate their own, it's an automatic exoneration. That's not true. And I can't speak to this particular police service and the inner workings of that police service. But I can tell you in general, good cops hate when bad cops do bad things. So she was exonerated. Now, if Sarah had been accused of something and then everybody later found that that thing she was accused of was not true and she was actually exonerated, what would she be saying if she was exonerated of something and everybody continued to put out the allegation that had been closed, had been investigated and closed? If somebody did that to Sarah, well, she'd hit the roof about how unfair that is. Yet here she is, right? Here she is doing it to somebody else. Because why? Because it benefits her, or it might benefit her, because she likes to lash out, because she likes to cause grief to somebody who doesn't like her or doesn't agree with her, because she's vengeful. This isn't an allegation that is current or that is about her case. So what are you doing here, Sarah? Whatever that was is done, has nothing to do with you. So what's the issue? The issue is I just want to sling mud at everybody and hurt everybody I can. Okay, let me keep going. I'm sure you are familiar with, after watching all my plastered, highly misconstrued, over 30 plus million views just on one site, interviews, and in which they both repeatedly attempted to feed me their incorrect, incomplete, hypothesized opinion by stating to me everyone has their limits at this seemingly endless point of perpetuality of nonsense and lawlessness still growing, and I very much want to advance to the next level after ongoing 5 years now. A genuine concerned limit has been reached. Whoops. Is that concerned or concerted? Concerned. Why am I still not being included in my case? How much more of my case and self is being added hourly, especially after this letter gets loose to the internet, increasing the mass infection and destruction of my hopes to have a fair trial, anything fair, my side foremost, and wondering now if my attorney drank the punch like everyone else. Okay, I got to go back and let's take this apart. In reference to the detectives, I'm sure you are familiar with, after watching all my plastered, highly misconstrued interviews, basically. All her interviews, and she throws in all these other words to drive it home that the whole world saw it. Sometimes I think she's almost proud of the 30 plus million views just on one site. And she accuses the detectives of repeatedly attempting to feed her a narrative, basically. That happens in police interviews where they will say things like, it's okay, we know it was an accident. For example, to get a suspect to say, yes, that's right. It was an accident. And that gets them talking. I think I don't want to go into great detail here about interrogations in general, or even this one, because I did other videos on the subject. I think if there is an issue with the interview itself or with the interviews themselves, that is up to defense counsel to bring up in a manner that highlights whatever it is the defense wants to highlight. And perhaps an argument can be made about some aspect of this. We'll have to see. We can't see because this thing isn't going to trial, because Sarah doesn't want it to go to trial. And this paragraph and this complaint also again shows me that she has been talking to people in custody and they're telling her things, and that happens. That's how it goes in jail. Oh, get your lawyer to do this. Well, have you thought about that? Etc., etc. And I very much want to advance to the next level after ongoing 5 years now. She's saying a genuine concerned limit has been reached. And that's interesting how she used the language in that way. Has been reached, not I've reached my limit. She says, I very much want to advance to the next level. Well, what is that? What is the next level? Would that be maybe a trial that you earlier in this letter leaked out that it's just a predicted trial date because you don't actually want a trial? You just want everybody to say you're not guilty and then you can go home. Again, with not being included in her case, not true. How much more of my case and self is being added hourly to the internet? Well, I think that's what you wanted, isn't it? And here in the brackets, she says, especially after this letter gets loose. No, the letter didn't get loose. It didn't jump up and escape on its own. Sarah, you wrote it, you sent it, you stated the purpose of sending the letter was so that the world could see it. You did that, Sarah, but you can't take responsibility for anything, including the things that you intend to do and that you want done, that you demand happen. I recall another letter and how she complained that the court clerk didn't put the whole thing up on the internet because it was double-sided and the clerk didn't put on the other side of the page. So she is going to resend it all and make sure that it gets published on the internet. But this letter that she's writing for the purpose of making sure the world sees it, this letter will somehow get loose. Going to escape. This is like a cartoon. So this letter is going to get loose, and by doing so, it's going to increase the mass infection and destruction of my hopes to have a fair trial. Hello? So the letter is going to do this on its own, and as a result, she won't have a fair trial. But no responsibility here for the fact that she actually wrote and released this letter and intended that this letter increase the mass infection and destruction and blah, blah, blah. She can't take responsibility for anything. It's everybody else's fault. Even when it's her behavior, it's everybody else's fault. All aforementioned reasons and so many more for this letter to be written, hoping to deter some of the unfair, one-sided finger-pointing of corruption and malpractice being directed at me only by those in the justice system who are trying to deflect the shames. I'm not sure if I'm reading that right. You'll have to look at it. Trying to deflect the shames and shock from me, fearlessly challenging the status quo. And it must be so because it's in my face on the computer at the same time on my boob tube television, brainwashed, ignorant followers of disbelief, conformity, and greed, trying unsuccessfully to make my life by character assassination seem worse than theirs. No, two, when anyone points their finger, one, it's impolite, and two, three, point back at you. How many tried it to see? How many tried it to see? Oh my gosh. Okay. I got to go back here and let's... So she's just finished complaining that the letter is going to get loose and add to all of her problems and cause her to not have a fair trial. And then she, in the very next paragraph, says, so many reasons for this letter to be written. And the letter that is going to add to the mass infection is hopefully going to deter some of the unfair finger pointing. And it's not just finger pointing. It is finger pointing of corruption and malpractice. And the only people doing that are those in the justice system. There's a part here that kind of makes my stomach turn because now I'm sort of processing that this word is shame, trying to deflect the shame and shock from me fearlessly challenging the status quo. So she's accusing those in the justice system of feeling shame and shock. And so they're just deflecting. Do you see any irony here? Those in the justice system are deflecting. And what they're deflecting is the shame and shock because this woman fearlessly challenged the status quo. Hero, martyr, savior, martyr. This is a pattern with her. And in any kind of relationship, this is a red flag. This is a problem. And she adds it must be so because it's in my face on the computer at the same time on my boob tube. Derogatory. So, hey, public, according to Sarah, you are stupid. You are stupid and you're just going to believe whatever you see on the internet and you're just going to believe whatever you see on the television. Are there some people out there like that? Well, yeah. But she herself is calling you stupid. And so what is the solution to that? Is it to perhaps dig deeper, to do a bit of analysis, to look at actual evidence, or maybe to want a trial so that the evidence that is actually admissible can be presented and tested, and to hear a defense lawyer make arguments for the defense so you can understand, so you can think about it. Is that Sarah's solution? No. Sarah's solution is, hey, I'm writing a letter. You listen to me. Don't listen to anything else. You listen to me and you accept my narrative. We were playing hide and seek. I put him in the suitcase. I'm a good mother. So, public, you're brainwashed, ignorant, followers of disbelief. Does that make you feel like you want to listen to her? If that's what she thinks of you? And the trying to make my life by character assassination seem worse than theirs. She's trying to make herself feel better. And the pointing the fingers. It's impolite. Look, respect me. Don't be mean to me. Show me care. Reassure me. Certainly don't be impolite. How polite was she to Mr. Torres when he was in the suitcase begging to get out and she said, F you? How polite was it when he couldn't breathe and she laughed? Impolite, maybe? And this 3-point back at you. How many tried to see it? Does she think that everybody who heard this sat there and checked? Put the stone down, as there will be no casting of anything today, except maybe for the role, For the role of my part for all the pre-conclusion documentaries and crystal ball real-life stories of true crime incorrectly formulated from everyone supposedly knowing me and judging who they think I am, what really happened, and is going to futuristically. This is why I interrupt her letters so much, because to go through it, you need to go through clause by clause. Okay, put the stone down. Don't you throw any stones at me, as there will be no casting stones today, except for the ones that I've cast from this mountain of rocks I have behind me. Except maybe for the role of my part. Am I reading this correctly? Except maybe for, does that say role of my part, path? For all the pre-conclusion documentaries. You know what? I don't think I'm reading her writing correctly because I'm having trouble understanding this little section here. I am, however, hearing loud and clear here her pre-conclusion documentaries, like Crystal Ball, all that. All these true crime stories that are common are incorrectly formulated. Does she think there's going to be a documentary about her? From everyone supposedly knowing me and judging who they think I am. what really happened. Well, you know what? If you want us to know what happened, tell us. If you want so bad for everybody to hear what really happened, tell us. Because you know what? We want to know. We want to know what really happened. Because this hide and seek nonsense is nonsense. And everybody knows that. Sarah, you know that we know that. So instead of going on and on and on about how people need to know, tell us. Say it. Tell us what happened. It's not advisable to do so before your trial, but if you really want to, you can. Free speech. And if you don't want to tell us, then shut up until it's time to tell your story. But here's the problem. It keeps not being time to tell the story because she doesn't want to actually go to trial and have to have everything come out. Because at trial, it's not just her version that gets told. Other evidence will come in. And you know who doesn't have a voice here, who has been silenced in all of this, is the victim. He can't write letters. He can't say what happened to him. His voice can only be heard at the time of trial. The medical evidence will speak in part for him. But Sarah doesn't want people to see all of the evidence. She wants people to listen to her side only, and don't you dare question it. Because if you do, you're somehow a lemming. And what really happened? Yeah, we want to know. Go to trial. Remember 3 point back. What? 3 points back? I don't know what that means. All right, I'm not spending more time on that. Soothsaying is not a real job, okay? Go to trial. Shut everybody up. To sum it up, in the words of my attorney, after I told her to Google me, she stated, there's a lot. Okay, yes, there is. And if that's not what you wanted, Sarah, why do you keep writing letters to the public and now to the world? Why are you doing that if you don't want it out there? To sum it up, in the words of myself, the defendant stated to my attorney after she stated that to me, when can I see? How much longer do I have to wait? Or how many attorneys must be withdrawn for me to be included in my case and be included more than the world presently is? Oh, interesting. All this complaining about what the world is seeing and she is not. All along, I've thought this was about some piece of disclosure. Is she looking to view what's being said about her? Is that what she's after? But you know what? The people talking about her is not part of her case. What do you think of this paragraph there? This is my case in every aspect. See all my aforementioned ongoing 5-year questions. I am still waiting for an answer. Also, I want to make it known I walked out on my attorney in our last meeting due to her unwarranted, uninformative, unprofessional, snotty attitude and her untruthful answers to my questions and beyond. The, retarded, vicious circle? What? We enter every time we meet is a waste of time. And I'm saying that being in jail with supposed endless amounts of. How she treats me is extremely prejudiced, hostile, and unconcerned. And there's that unconcerned word again. All right. So she's still waiting for answers that she hasn't got for 5 years, still not specifically stating what the questions are that she wanted the answers to. And she says, I did walk out on my attorney. So she is admitting that. But of course, this is the attorney's fault. If this happened one time or with one person, if she was just exasperated or angry or somebody was really awful to her and she walked out like, I'm not putting up with this. Yeah, I could see that. Except it isn't one time. This is a pattern of behavior with a variety of different people. I don't like what you're saying, so I'm not listening to you, and I'm going to find a way to make you pay. I'm either going to make things really difficult for you, or I'm going to slander you. I'm going to do something, whatever I can, to get you. And it will be all your fault. Everybody's going to know it's all your fault. Never Sarah's fault. So what did the attorney do? something unwarranted, uninformative. Does that mean it was uninformative because the attorney didn't have the information, or because the attorney refused to give information that she did have, or because, Sarah, you didn't get the answer you wanted to hear? Unprofessional. Really specify. In what way? If you're throwing around allegations and doing so publicly, that could impact somebody's livelihood, reputation, career. If you're doing that, you better come up with the goods. What specifically was the unprofessional conduct? That is a serious allegation. State what it is and bring receipts. Otherwise, shut up, because nobody believes it anymore. This is just mudslinging and snotty, untruthful answer. Well, wait a minute. I thought the attorney never answered any questions. Okay, so untruthful answer. What is it? What is the lie? And the judge asked her in court, what's the lie? Because Sarah is making an allegation publicly and to a judge. This lawyer lied to me, the client. That's serious. That's a serious allegation. And so the judge said, oh, okay, what was the lie? And you know what? There wasn't one. Yep. She's just going to say, well, it's untruthful, because she's not hearing what she wants to hear. So if it doesn't fit with what I want to hear, then it must be a lie and beyond. So I guess we're all supposed to imagine just how horrible this lawyer is, how horrible everybody is, except for Sarah. I might have to stop soon because I'm getting really annoyed. And retarded vicious circle? What kind of language is that? You know what? I will let everybody else comment on that. We enter every time we meet is a waste of time. And Sarah is saying it's a waste of Sarah's time, considering she has so much time because she's in custody. She can't be, going out shopping or hanging out with her friends or anything. So it's not like she's short on time. And she's using that to say, yeah, I have a lot of time and I still think it's a waste of time. What do you want? You keep saying you want fair and informative here and professional, but nothing is good enough. I said, I don't know how many videos ago, a long time ago, that there is no lawyer on the planet Earth who is going to be good enough for Sarah Boone, in Sarah Boone's mind. There is no lawyer with whom she will be satisfied. It's impossible. It might have been in my Sarah Waiting for Superman video, but I'm not sure. How she treats me is extremely prejudiced, hostile, and unconcerned. And it's all about Sarah. And here's this word, or this concept of concern again. Everybody owes her care beyond what everybody else should get, I guess. And she's just throwing out these nasty words. Prejudiced, hostile. She is not putting any substance behind this. This is just using words, emotional words, nasty words. She's just using them as arrows. There's nothing behind them. There's no evidence behind them that she's presenting here. It's just name calling. And she knows what words to use that are going to have more impact. This is the beginning of page 8, and I think I've gone on long enough. So I will pick this up again at a later time. Trust your gut. I'll see you in the comments.